Yeah, they're not going to do a job of being racist.
I have a website called pingdemic.com. Like the word pingdemic. So pingdemic.com I made a couple of weeks ago. It has some very recent research which has covered 3 different studies which show that it's quite an interesting phenomenon. So 3 separate academic scientific studies, all peer reviewed, showed that when people get the coronavirus vaccines and that are supposed to produce antibodies, the antibodies produced emerge within 10 days in 100% of people. That means, now if you've got a new agent entering your body, antibodies will be produced in about 30 days. So in other words, what is shown by the body's reaction to the injection is that these viruses are known to the human body. They are a reaction to one of 2 options. Either SARS viruses have been circulating in sufficient quantity or distribution such that everyone has already had them, or SARS viruses as coronaviruses are so similar in their form to the other 4 common coronaviruses that cause the common cold, like H143, that the human body automatically mounts a response to them, which is effective unless you have a fundamentally effective immune system. And that might explain why certain categories of people, like for example my colleague who died early this year from or with COVID, but had a stroke last summer, that those categories of people are the ones who are vulnerable. And there was a study done by John Ioannidis from Stanford University, one of the leading epidemiologists in the world. His his analysis of the infection fatality rate was published by the World Health Organization in January this year in the official bulletin of the World Health Organization. And he said that between 20 and 80% of all deaths attributed to COVID-19 are organizational, caused by organizational questions. What does that mean? It means they died in care homes. That's what it means. It means they died because they were in care homes where inadequate protection was put in place to prevent those people from catching a respiratory virus that was highly contagious. Now, those measures could have been taken. There is no reason why any care home residents should have died from it. Between 20 and 80% of the deaths in the world happened in care homes. What does that mean? What we're talking about is how we treat the elderly. And there's a reason why the majority of deaths, or better said, the highest death rates, have been in advanced capitalist countries like the United States, like Great Britain, like Spain, Italy. The reason why the deaths have been so high is because we dump the elder generation in care homes and then leave them to rot there. And by isolating them from the younger generation, we do not update their immune system, which contracted grandchildren or which children will do. There was a study in Beijing that showed that 100% of children under the age of 15 years of age have got immune reaction, 100% immune reaction to all 4 common coronaviruses. means they all catch it at school from each other. That's a mechanism of natural dissemination of immunity. And in my opinion, which is not my view at the beginning of March last year, when I stood up here and called for a 3-week lockdown, I believe I was wrong. And I've said so multiple times, that I was wrong, that you couldn't catch it from objects, that you couldn't, or better said, that immunity was rooted in T cells, not in antibodies. In other words, in long-term memory. That asymptomatic people are not any significant vector of transmission. And that the tests that are used do not work and have never been standardized. And the CDC of the United States of America last week agreed that they would drop the PCR test in December because it is not able to distinguish clearly between the flu and SARS-CoV-2. That's what they stated themselves on their own website. And they are dropping it in December. So if they're dropping the central tool, both for measuring the prevalence of disease, and also note this, the prevalence of disease was not the only issue being measured. It was also the mechanism for determining the efficacy of the vaccine. How did they know if a vaccine worked or not? They had to see if people caught coronavirus. How did they know if they'd caught coronavirus? They used the PCR test. But Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, Sinopharm, and all the rest of the vaccine producers did not have a common, standardized CT level, that means the amplification level of the molecules. So they all knew they were checking for the same thing. So if this gentleman amplifies 1 times 20, it's different from that gentleman amplifying 1 times 40. And if I'm detecting the efficacy of a vaccine, I need to know how many people who received the vaccine caught the disease. Now if he's measuring 20 times multiplication, and he's measuring 40 times multiplication, he's going to find more people than he is. So unless you standardise the number of tests, and you standardise the reagents and the lab quality, you will not possibly know what the results mean. So when Moderna says we achieved 95%, which meant 95% of those people, so 20,000 people in the control group, 20,000 people received the vaccine. So one group placebo, one group vaccine. Amongst those who didn't get the vaccine, 162 came down ill, or better said, got a positive PCR test and one symptom. What was the symptom? A cough, a sniffle, or a fever. All of which are symptoms for about 200 different other agents in human illnesses, respiratory illnesses. So we don't know whether those people had COVID-19 as it's clinically diagnosed. All we know is when a positive PCR test is not standardised and one symptom, which can come from many other things. And therefore, the trials that were used to justify the rollout of these vaccines were not valid for proving what they claim to prove. And the WHO correctly, the WHO, to be fair, if you imagine the WHO was totally benign and had no influence from Bill Gates, from the big pharma and so on, if you imagine that for a minute, and you look at the old bureaucratic WHO that used to exist, there was one that wasn't if you imagine how they operate as this global bureaucratic entity, in the summer, early summer last year, people were saying, PCR test cannot be used for diagnosis. It can only be used as an aid to diagnosis on a standardised level. Like you say, probably 17 to 20 cycles. Some people say 20 to 25 cycles. You might then detect an active infection in someone. On the other side, the WHO will take time to process. And in January this year, they admitted, in fact in December last year, they admitted the PCR test cannot be used as a diagnosis. And yet to this day the British government declares cases. What does the case mean? It does not mean they are diagnosed as sick with COVID-19. It does not mean that.
What does it mean?
It only means that the molecule has been detected, or parts of the molecule, of that identified 30,000 strands, parts of them have been found in that person's body. It could come, for example, if I had such molecules in my throat now, and you're standing in a meeting with me, and minuscule aerosol droplets land inside your nose. They will not make you sick, but they will be present. So if you were then detected and tested afterwards, you could find molecules that came out of my mouth in that person's nose.
It's a very small chance though, isn't it?
It's not a small chance, it's a reasonably high chance. All of their contacts, not one single person caught anything. Not one.
But that clearly
in other
means
words,
you place your trust in the Chinese government statistics more than you place them in anybody else.
every single measure in the world that has been taken because of data drawn from China. So, I used to work for the Chinese press. My speciality is Chinese political. I've got a PhD in the subject matter. I do not believe every word the Chinese say, but there is no reason to doubt scientific studies carried out by them that have characteristic of that nature. And there is no evidence anywhere in the world. The only evidence was provided was one woman, this is where the whole asymptomatic story comes from. One woman who visited Germany in January last year was said to be asymptomatic. She then apparently passed it on to other people who became symptomatic. That was the story on which the whole theory of asymptomatic transmission was based. It turned out, however, that she was taking large quantities of paracetamol to conceal her symptoms when she attended the meetings where she spread the virus to others. And therefore the initial theory used to justify the entire measures around the world. And by the way, I'll show you how the Chinese treat that.